So this Carney event was here in Ottawa? When he does it, it's strategic, the Liberals tell me, but when Poilievre does it, it's offensive, apparently.
Right. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. Today we've got some updated polling data. We've got Jagmeet Singh getting destroyed in his own riding. Conservatives coming out with a new plan. More talks of annexing Canada. There's likely some dirty politics going on in the background. Let's jump into this. First up, we got Jagmeet Singh here, projected to be third place in his own riding. It's coming from Shreya Teest here. Modeled out Liberals and Conservatives tied in this Burnaby Central riding here. Perfect. I hope to never see him again after the next election. We're seeing a whole bunch of news and stories, different polls and stuff coming out with Mark Carney getting a little bump here as he's stepped into the limelight. He's already assumed a role as Prime Minister, which should break the law. He's getting inside information. He's not even an elected member of parliament, but with that, we've got stuff like this. This is essentially coming off of stuff like this. Trump's pursuit of the golden age jolts Canada to confront its growth problem. So only after 10 years of destroying Canada and the Liberals about to lose an election, now they're deciding to step up. If we take a look at a graph like this that the Pleb posted, you can see that Donald Trump was easily winning here. Joe Biden was very much losing. Make it full screen so you can see the percentages here. So he's up in the high 50s. And then once Kamala Harris was put into position there, you can see she comes in here, this teal line. So Biden was just falling off a cliff here because of his performance in the debates. Kamala Harris comes in, she gets the big bump. Suddenly she's ahead. It is quite possibly that Mark Carney is right here at this bump. Him entering in, it's a little bit exciting for people who are on the fence and they don't know who to vote for, but this new person makes it exciting and then just kind of drops off a cliff again. Once people realize who Kamala Harris is, she very much lost. Hopefully the same thing happens here. People realize who Mark Carney is. This is a carbon tax king. This guy will impose carbon taxes on everything, carbon tariffs. He will decimate our country much worse than Justin Trudeau ever did. And with that, it seems very much the Liberals are playing dirty politics here. That we've seen some dirty polling data coming out from Ecos. Well, now we have stuff like this where suggestions of Canada joining the European Union. Like, get out of here. Why would we join the European Union? We're not even close to Europe. We got other news here. So conservatives are having to fight back against this because the Axe the Tax slogan is not working anymore because all these Liberals are lying about who they are and they're like, oh yeah, we'll axe the tax now that we're losing. Even Mark Carbon Tax Carney saying he'll axe the tax. It's a joke. It's a lie. Like, that's who the guy is. The guy was the creator of the carbon tax. And so Pierre coming out with this Canada First rally, expected to be major rebranding a Conservative campaign. This is a smart move. And, Pierre's been a little bit radio silent, and I get it as the Conservatives. It's difficult to judge what the situation is politically with what's happening with Donald Trump. And I think that's allowed Mark Carney to step in there, spewing his lies about cutting the carbon tax and Mr. Banker. There's a lot of those on the fence voters who get easily swayed by simple things like he used to be a banker. He must be smart versus actually looking into his policies and who the man is. Unfortunately, that's some people will just go at face value. So hopefully people get educated before the election. And that's what this is about. They're rebranding themselves to have a stronger position against Carney. And we're seeing that now with ads like this, same team, same agenda, same policies, Mark Carney. So the Conservatives really need to hammer down on this. With that, we've got the Liberals coming out now announcing their first leadership debates. We've got the 24th first in French and the 25th in English. I believe they're only going to be doing 2 debates. Despite this, Chrystia Freeland wanted 4, which I think is better, bring in more debates, but they're very much trying to hide Mark Carney. They only let him do his media appearances in America, and he doesn't talk to Canadian media at all. He's basically not allowed. And we've got a clip of that exactly here on CBC.
It's a time for serious people.
So this Carney event was here in Ottawa?
This, no. The one that I was at was here in Ottawa. Sorry. Okay, all right. But is he going to do any national Canadian interviews while he's in the capital city? Because CNN and BBC have had their chance. Any idea? Do the Liberals know if they're candidates? I knew you were going to do this, David. I can list all the places. But you know what? You know how I feel in this. I would like him to be here because I think he'd be good.
I'm just raising it to
but if he needed to be here, needed to be here, he would be here.
No, he needs to do media in Canada, period. These losers on CBC are just paid off shills.
No, when he does it, it's strategic, the Liberals tell me, but when Poilievre does it, it's offensive, apparently.
Right. Oh, get out of here. You guys are a bunch of losers, traitors to our country, spewing this propaganda. They didn't even announce Carney's running in Canada. Done on a U.S. talk show. Exactly. They did on the Jon Stewart show. Disgraceful. Insulting, no respect for Canadians, bigger than life projection. Stop funding the CBC. They need to be defunded now. The old boss hasn't left. He just took an option for himself and the Liberal Party. Leftists are going down big time in Canada. It's the same pattern we see here in America. And with that, they're only going to do 2 debates. Like, that should tell you all you need to know about Mark Carney. They just basically don't want him to slip out any information to expose who he really is. But don't worry, we'll be doing that here on this channel. I've already been doing. I have multiple videos dedicated to how terrible his policies are and will be for Canada. And speaking of terrible, we've got Mary Simon. Look at this. Congratulations, everyone. Let's give her a round of applause. She now makes $378,000 a year. She needed that $15,200 raise for doing absolutely nothing in her government. Congratulations, Mary. I like the first response here is, did her clothing allowance increase? Her expense account increase? As she knows how to live the good life, a good Governor General she is not. Just another incompetent Trudeau appointment. Governor General spent $3 million in travel during the first full year in office. Like, she's a disgrace. This is hilarious. The next response is me. Yeah, in this video, I was pointing out of her being a part of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. What does she do? I don't know. I don't know what she does. Does anyone know what she does aside from show up to a few media appearances? She doesn't speak French. She avoids Quebec like the plague. So what does she do? I don't know. So with that, we have more of this talk of annexing Canada because Justin Trudeau slipped that out, or intentionally or unintentionally leaked out that stuff when he was doing his summit in Toronto.
There will be no messing with the 49th parallel, period.
Canada's free. Canada is sovereign. Canada will choose its own destiny. Thank you very much.
The president has been very clear that he is continuing to have the conversation around the annexation, which most Americans don't take seriously. I would say we don't believe, generally that that's actually something that's real or in a real agenda.
President Trump isn't joking when he talks about Canada becoming a 51st state. That's the message. CTV News has learned that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered to attendees an economic summit that he hosted today in Toronto. Just how seriously should we take the threat? Let's bring in the front bench on this Friday. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's a senior advisor at Cpac Advocacy and North Star Public Affairs. Melanie Paradis was the communications director for former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, now the president of Texture Communications. And Nojoud Al-Malise. I'm going to start with you in this wow moment. Astonishing comments again by President Trump. Territorial expansion of the United States. We're talking about Canada, but of course, recently he's talked about Gaza, Greenland, Panama. A lot of Canadians find this sort of stuff deeply offensive. Is this real? Is it throwing spaghetti at the wall?
So it's strategic. Certainly, it's neither fake nor throwing spaghetti at the wall. But the president of the United States is a disruptor. That's his negotiation tactic. He approaches inertia in like loggerheads in negotiations by being as disruptive as possible. So he'll come to the table with an idea or a statement that is completely wild and just rattles everyone, get the energy flowing in the room again, positively or negatively. But it eliminates immediately any inertia in a negotiation. And you can choose to respond to that with hysterics, or you can choose to respond to that by getting to work. I think it's really interesting that Dominic LeBlanc just 2 months ago and the prime minister went down to Mar-a-Lago and they met with President Trump. And in part of their conversation, Trump made a reference to the 51st state. And when Dominic LeBlanc was asked about this, at the time he said, "This is just a joke. The president was joking around. Don't worry about this." And now, 2 months later, we hear the prime minister on a hot mic saying that this isn't a joke and he's actually quite serious and we need to take this very seriously. What this tells me is that the Liberals have not forgotten the number one rule of a crisis, which is never let a good crisis go to waste.
This is a great take. So she's spot on there with everything. Donald Trump is a disruptor. That's how he negotiates. I'm sure that's how he negotiated when he was building towers, buying land, anything to do with real estate in New York. It's a tough business. Come in there strong, shake people off their feet, and then make a good deal. And he's doing the same thing here. And the Liberals are taking advantage of this. They could call an election right now, which is what's best for Canadians. They don't care about Canadians. They care about themselves. It's all about their self-interests, $300,000 a year, their big paychecks. Mary Simon's not dissolving Parliament. No, why would she? $378,000 a year. She's not letting that gravy train go. She doesn't care about Canadians. Neither does Trudeau or Mark Carney. They're all a bunch of self-serving losers.
Sabrina, let's bring you into the conversation. We know that Trump's critics say the president craves attention, publicity, and that people give into his game if they hyperventilate over every controversial or outrageous comment that they think he makes. On the other hand, he is unpredictable. Now the prime minister saying this is serious. What's your take?
So I agree with everything that Mel said, but I think that this version of Donald Trump is a lot different than the Donald Trump we had in 2016 in Trump V1 administration. And the reason I would say that is because the amount of power that he has today is really unparalleled, right? And we've seen it feels like it's been a year already of his administration. He got into power 3 weeks ago. And, already you've seen some of these major things take place in the United States. USAID closed down, federal workers trying to be bought out, fired. You've seen actual flights leave the United States, headed to Cuba, headed to Colombia with migrants.
To India as well. They sent a military plane just the other day filled with people who illegally got into the country.
And so it's not like he's just throwing things around and then he's waiting to maybe do them. So I really think that this is a serious threat. And I think it is at our peril if we do not take this threat seriously. We have a lot of the things that the United States wants. That goes beyond energy. It includes water. It includes critical minerals. And we have a border and we have a, defense system that has always been predicated on the United States being our best friend. And now in 3 weeks, we have to completely change that mentality and step up our game in a way that we've never had to before because we've never been under this threat. So I think that this is a real serious threat. And I think the Liberals are right to be, inserting that fear into business and into Canadians, because the only way that you can respond is if you take it seriously.
The Liberals haven't been taking this serious. And if they want to take a look at what happened with Japan the other day, making a $1 trillion deal with America for LNG, they were here in 2023 trying to make the same deal, maybe not $1 trillion, but they're trying to make a huge multi-billion-dollar deal with Canada, which would have made us much more prosperous. Justin Trudeau turned them down. They said, get out of here. We don't want your massive amounts of money. Why don't you go to America and make them rich? We're seeing this bump in the polls. People need to take a look at the actual news. Do they want Mark Carney doing this? Sending away more countries that want to spend a lot of money in Canada? He's going to do the same thing as Trudeau. They're all the same. Carney has already done this. He's pushed away Canadian oil in favor of Nigerian oil, Saudi Arabia oil, Brazil oil for Brookfield Asset Management, his company there, the company he was chair for. He's going to be no different. And let's take a look at the critical minerals. What we have here right on the Government of Canada website, just so everyone can see here, the official website, here's the critical minerals map. So you can click on any one of these. These brown ones are mines, green ones are advanced projects, and the blue ones you can kind of hard to see here, processing facilities. When we jump over to this map, it's easier to actually see what all of these are. And as we can see here, a lot of uranium. So Canada has a lot of high-grade uranium, which is the best type. The most amount of high-grade uranium in the world. We've got phosphate, niobium, graphite, lithium, rare earth metals up here, Northwest Territories, tungsten, aluminum, molybdenum, nickel, cobalt, potash, graphite, vanadium, indium, more aluminum, etc. There's so many critical minerals in our country. We have so much water, so much oil and gas. We should be absolutely flushed to the gills with cash. We should not have to pay taxes. We should have free university, free college, all of that like they have in a lot of those Nordic countries. Yet we've had a government in power that doesn't believe in making Canada prosper. Now people are seeing Mark Carney, Mr. Banker, and thinking, oh, maybe Mr. Banker would be good at negotiating with Trump. Carney's already proven he doesn't have our best interest at heart. What kind of guy would invest in oil and gas around the world, but not in Canada, and doesn't want to support that in Canada and enforces the green climate transition in our country, which we've seen what it's done to us. It's decimating us.
Jude, how much of this is about economics? And Sabrina was talking about critical minerals. That's one issue. Trump has talked about Canada's banking sector, agricultural sectors, areas that he wants the U.S. to have more access to. Your read on how to make sense of all this?
Well, it's clear that the president is taking a more adversarial approach when it comes to trading relationships, economic relationships, even with allies. And you can look at the 51st state comment in that context of the president promising to usher in a golden age for Americans, that he is going to suck investment into America and he's going to get a good deal for them. But at the same time, we've heard the president say a lot of frankly outlandish ideas, including the idea of America taking over Gaza. And the reaction to those moments is quite swift, even from his own administration and Republicans themselves coming out and saying, wait, that's not going to happen. And so it's definitely concerning that the president has taken, at least for Canada, that the president has taken this kind of approach with us. At the same time, looking at how his own administration and allies have reacted to statements that are not feasible or don't align with his administration's goals, they've quickly kiboshed it. And so I sense that, with the 51st state idea, if he were to do more in that direction, you start seeing more reaction from Americans themselves being like, wait, do we want to do this?
There's some interesting polling that's been done by Nanos Research, and they asked the question, who is the best negotiator to deal with Donald Trump? And if we can bring that up, I just want to show the results here. 40% said Mark Carney, who is currently...
Karina Gould has to give in her money today. I think she's out. Look at this. This is like 1%.
In the race to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader. Second at 26% was Pierre Poilievre. In third place, Chrystia Freeland, 13%. And another Liberal leadership candidate, Karina Gould, was at just 1%. Just giving...
So just looking at this, so Pierre Poilievre has been kind of radio silent for the last couple of weeks. And Mark Carney has come out with his announcement. He's the fresh face. That's going to be a percentage of this for sure. We've also been seeing that really dirty polling data from Ecos, which is all just complete garbage. They heavily weight the sectors where Liberals were voting more and put way more weight into that than making the data invalid. But that's obviously probably tricks some people. Some people just think, oh, a banker, he knows what he's talking about. He must be good at negotiating. Some people are really simple like that. So that's where you'll get some of that percentage too. And on the fence voters who really didn't like Trudeau, but they're Liberals or maybe NDP, maybe jumping over to vote for Carney, that's where you're getting that. But let's take a look at the data itself. We got the poll here. The one they're talking about is here, this one. So Carney would be this red, and Pierre Poilievre 26 would be this blue. But if we look at the breakdown here, so this is an N equals 1,077 people. So this is 1,000 people. This doesn't represent all of Canadians, but it's a poll, 1,000 people. You're seeing a very high percentage here, 53% coming from Atlantic Canada, 80 people. Quebec and Ontario take the lion's share, 242 and 377. And you'll notice here, a lot more people in Quebec think Mark Carney would be better than Pierre Poilievre. And this is a higher number than if you look at Alberta, which is only 215, which you're seeing the opposite here, 39, almost 40% for Pierre Poilievre. Now, if we also look over here, what's interesting, there's way more people, almost 500 that are 55 plus. What is the group that watches CBC all day, doesn't know what's going on? Liberal voters, they're 55 plus. So the people who are watching CBC propaganda are being affected by all this. Carney, oh, Mr. Banker, he must know what he's talking about. That's at least what I take from this. And as the age drops here, you'll see Poilievre's number goes up higher here. It's basically tied for the 18 to 34 group. The banker thing and the fact that they're positioning Carney as some sort of outsider when clearly he's not. He's been whispering in Trudeau's ear here as his economic advisor for years, but most people don't realize that because they're not watching these videos every day or other people's videos, so they're not fully informed in who this guy is. So the shiny new syndrome is what we're getting here, a bump from. Just as we saw with this graph here of the polling from America with Kamala Harris, shiny new syndrome. So I think that's where Carney is right here. If you take a look here, Kamala entered in July, and we're talking about a month and a half later. If we take a look at the Liberal leadership race, we're basically right on track here. We're shiny new syndrome, Carney's right here, and then we'll see what really happens once people figure out and learn who Mark Carney is.
Snapshot. We also just heard from Mark Carney, who reacted to the whole issue of Canada being a 51st state, the latest comments from President Trump. Listen to what Mark Carney had to say on that.
The first, as I just said in French, it's not a surprise, and not a surprise to us.
The first, as I just said in French, so he's really trying to position himself. That was intentional that he said that.
That he and the Americans have designs on what we have, our resources and other options. But they're for us, they're for Quebecers, they're for Canadians, and we will make the most of them. The second thing is that look, we control our destiny. We're masters in our own house. We have enormous investment opportunities here in the region, here in the city. We're going to pursue them. The federal government has immense powers, and this is really, it's a crisis, but it's also a massive, massive opportunity.
Yeah, Mark Carney in Quebec City right now at the Winter Carnival Festival.
So he's trying to position himself as some sort of Quebecer. First, he came out in Edmonton. He's like, oh, yeah, this is where my roots are. I'm an Albertan. Now he's a Quebecer. Just remember, this guy holds 3 passports. Only one of them is in Canada. There's an interview where he's saying he's a European. Which country does he have allegiance to?
All right, back to you, Mel. Your read on Carney as the best negotiator and your thoughts on what it all means in terms of him and then some of the others.
I mean, he's certainly not. He can't decide whether he's for or against the carbon tax, let alone whether he'd be a good negotiator with Trump. He changes his mind quite often, it seems. Yeah. So I think that really what we need to see here is a real plan to open up open Canada up to markets, to get our uranium, our potash, our rare earth metals, our critical minerals to market. And we can't do any of these things, despite the conversation today at this business forum being all around that. The government can't do much of this without bringing Parliament back. At the end of the day, that's what we really need to do if we're going to see any progress on this. The Liberals themselves, even just in their border plan and in the fentanyl changes that they want to make, they need to pass like 3 pieces of legislation or make changes to 3 pieces of legislation in order to do that.
Right.
And if we don't bring Parliament back, how could we possibly meet this commitment to President Trump before the deadline,
They don't want to do that, though. They don't care about Canadians. If they did, they would bring it back right away and say, let's deal with this. Let's pass some bills. They'd have to do a throne speech. They would get taken down. They'd be tossed out of government. They know that. That's why they're not acting in Canada's best interest.
March 3rd, whatever the deadline is, when Parliament's not scheduled to come back until March 24th because of this unnecessary prorogation.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds. I just want to give an opportunity to both Sabrina and Najud to comment on the Mark Carney aspect. Let's start with you, Najud. Your take, you just heard Carney. Your thoughts on the best negotiator?
Well, we've polls so far that suggest that Canadians are interested in hearing more from Mark Carney, that they're open to his message. I mean, just based off of his resume, he used to be the Bank of Canada governor of the Bank of England. It's easy to see why Canadians would look at Mark Carney and think he might be well positioned to deal with Donald Trump on economic.
The problem with that is Canadians don't look into stuff further. The average Canadian who are not watching videos on here, they just see a couple snippets and are like, oh, he used to be the banker of this and that. He must know what he's talking about. Shiny new syndrome. When they find out that he actually decimated the UK with their economy with his banking practices, I'm coming directly from the former Prime Minister of the UK saying that he was disastrous. But people don't see that. They're just like, they look at him and go, oh yeah, he looks like a banker. You got to remember, we have so many Canadians who voted for Justin Trudeau because he had nice hair. People need to wake up and start becoming informed about who they want to vote for and not just pick something because, oh, he looks like a banker. That's probably a good guy to have negotiate for us.
Economic files, but as time goes, he'll be tested on that.
Sabrina?
You know, I think that the opposition hates to see a crisis coming, and this is a clear example of why, because it makes them lose ground. You know, I think Pierre Poilievre has been operating on bumper sticker slogans for months now, and that doesn't work in a crisis. This is a crisis where politics requires full sentences, and someone like Mark Carney and the Liberals are bringing that to the table. And so I think
Mark Carney's not even doing media appearances in Canada. The reason why he goes to America is it's a much bigger audience. So he goes there, and he won't get grilled by Canadian politicians who know all the ins and outs. The Americans don't, so he won't get hard questions, and it goes to a bigger audience, and then all the Canadian ones will pick it up and broadcast it, but he avoids all of the conflict and all of the potentially tough, challenging questions he doesn't want to answer. Like why he doesn't want to invest in oil and gas in Canada, but he's happy to do it through Brookfield Asset Management around the world. He doesn't want to talk about that at all.
It is going to be an uphill battle for the Conservatives as they continue to navigate this, this foray. And it'll be interesting to see how the Liberals and Carney and the rest of the candidates respond.
Well, there we have it. Mark Carney getting a little bump here. It's the new shiny syndrome. It's not going to stay like that. Mark Carney refuses to do media in Canada. It's only a matter of time before Canadians get a whiff of who this guy really is.